Hi there, this is Ranjit from tech2buzz.com. I have been using computers for approximately about 21 or 22 years, and in this video I'm going to talk about the 2 decades of computing in which I have grown. This is from early 90s and to date, and how computers have changed and evolved and how it's affecting our lives. Quite a few of you might find this boring, so if you find it boring, please do not watch this video, because this is not going to be about some latest upcoming technology or something like that, but it's going to be looking at the past. So let's get on with it. My adventures with computers and tinkering around started very early in the school, and I think so I was in 7th or 8th class, do not remember exactly, and we just got computers in our school and we had a computer class. My only inclination to go and attend those class was due to the fact that the teacher there was pretty flexible and he allowed us to play a lot of games. So that was my initial inclination to go and join the computer class. And I do not think I learned a lot in that, but I used to play a lot of games. For example, Digger, we used to play Pac-Man, and we used to play Space Invaders. So actually the interest in computers for me actually started not due to programming or something like that, but the inclination was to play games. And this continued for quite some time, and at that time computers were really expensive, and it was a huge box, and the monitor was a green color thing. And fortunately, after about 2 years, I think so, my elder cousin got a own computer, and that was IBM 286. It had about 40 MB of hard drive, and I think so it had 1 MB of RAM. Not very sure about it, but actually my adventures of computer actually started because of that computer. I used to actually sneak out at night and use that computer. I got the opportunity to load some games. As usual, I told you that my inclination was games, and I played this one game I remember a lot that was known as Prince of Persia. And to just please my brother, I used to do a little bit of what you call basic programming, so that he used to think that okay, this guy is learning something like that. So that's how I got exposure to the computers. And you must be like thinking, okay, playing games, nothing great about it. And at that time, and this was 91 or something like that, 91 or 92, I don't want to exactly recall. We had DOS. We had Windows 3.0, but the computer that I had did not have a mouse, so it was no fun using Windows with just cursors. And Windows was really clunky and slow at that time. It used to crash a lot, so we used to work a lot with DOS. And I used to spend a lot of time tinkering around with the commands of DOS. We had to manually type a command to execute a file. For example, you have to copy a file from one location to, let's say, a floppy drive. We used to get those big 5.5 inch floppy drive. You have to use manual commands, and I used to spend hours and hours on tinkering with these commands and reading the manuals. For example, let's say you have the copy command. We used to have flags to do additional works. For example, copy/s/x, stuff like that. And I used to be playing around with that, and I used to get excited. Can you believe me? I got excited when we moved from DOS 3 to DOS 5. And because DOS 5 had a lot more commands and I could play around with the computer a lot more. Things moved on. I moved to college. Still, I did not have my own personal computer, but the computing evolved, and we used to get 386 and 486 started coming. And some of my good friends had a much more powerful computer, that's a 486. And I remember this one game that we had initially. It's called Doom. And the thing is that to play computer games at that time, you had to make a lot of manual configurations. It's not just like you just load the game and just start it and you can play. The game used to crash. You need to make manual settings, like you had to edit the config.sys. We have to manage the EMS memory, something like that. We had a limitation of 640 kilobytes of memory. and to bypass that you have to use EMS memory or stuff like that. So you need to manually edit config.sys, autoexe.bat and stuff like that. And I was pretty good at that because I used to play a lot with DOS. So I became popular with my friends because they used to call me to their house just to configure their games so that they could play it easily. And I used to get to play the games obviously, and I used to do it just for the heck of it. Later on, a couple of years later, about this was 94 or 95, I convinced my uncle to get a new computer. This was a Pentium 60, and we were running Windows 3.1, I think so, 1.1 or something like that at that time. And I agreed to do some office work for him, basic accounting, and we used to use the word processor. And the agreement was that I could basically use the computer for my personal stuff, apart from the office timings. And I really loved that. And the thing was that in these early days, we do not had sound like you have right now in the modern computers. You need to install a dedicated sound card to get sound from the computer. And at that time, these sound cards, etc., were considered to be needless accessory, or because they were pretty expensive. And fortunately, I saved the money and I got installed a sound card and a CD-ROM drive in this Pentium 60 computer. They were pretty expensive at that time, the CD-ROM and the sound card. I think so Creative used to sell a bundle kit of they used to call it a multimedia kit or something like that, and they used to sell the CD-ROM and the sound card with that. As I had access to this computer a lot, I started to tinker around a lot with C, and I actually played a lot with Turbo C. I used to make my own programs and stuff like that and give it to my friends or something. It's stupid that I never published these programs because some of them were pretty good, because I was not able to find some utilities or stuff like that, and I used to make them in Turbo C. I had a lot of fun with Turbo C. Then something interesting happened. I think that this was 95 or 96, I don't know. But as I told you, that CD-ROM started to be prevalent, and there was a magazine called PC Quest. What they had did, they had started bundling a CD-ROM with their magazine. So I was just ecstatic because about 600 MB of softwares, I used to just get that magazine just for that CD and load all the programs available, because at that time we didn't have internet connections and stuff like that, and so getting latest programs and stuff was pretty difficult. So getting that PC Quest CD was like a nirvana for me. Gradually other companies also started providing magazines like this, but PC Quest was the first to do that, and I remember that I had a lot of fun with those CDs. Moving on to 96, something interesting started to happen. A thing called internet. It's not like the internet that we have right now. This net that we had was basically text based. They used to call it shell access. So you used to get a black box like it was a Linux browser or something. It was pure text. So you you load a web page, or you used to get everything on the wire text, and that was really exciting for me. I used this shell account for about 1.5 years, I think so. In 1997, TCP/IP connection was unveiled by BSNL. This is what is the graphical internet that you see right now. And again, it was pretty expensive, but I got a limited connection for myself. And this is where I saw the real power of the web. We used to use the, Netscape Navigator web browser, and that was considered the king at that time. Internet Explorer, I think so at that time, just started about it. Not very sure about it. And we used to access the internet via phone lines. So we used to use this modem. And I was using an old modem that was a 14.4 kilobits modem, and I had a hard time upgrading from a 14.4 to a 28.8 kilobit modem because they were pretty expensive. And I remember the name of the modem was Boca modem. And end of 97, I went to an institution called CDAC. I actually did not want to go there, but my parents got really worried. What is this guy doing with computers? Let us send him to some professional institute. So 6 months I went to CDAC, but I did not learn anything there because I already used to tinker around with a lot of things. So I knew quite a few things they were teaching. So for that 6 months I just had fun, but I made some really good friends. After that, coming back from CDAC, what I had done is basically I joined a job because I had enough. I wanted to purchase my own computer and wanted to use the internet, because as I have told you, the internet used to work on a phone line and it was pretty expensive. So the main reason for me to join a job was to get my own computer and my own internet connection in my house, so that nobody could argue with me. And the job was pretty interesting that I got for that time. And we used to run a BSD Linux server. And the interesting part was that the job role that I had was to make website, and not static websites but dynamic websites. And we used to use stuff like Perl and ASP, that's from Microsoft, and we used to use databases and JavaScript to make these interactive dynamic websites. And at that time, even static websites were not popular, so what we were doing was really cool and innovative. So, and actually one of the main reasons that I stick to that job was that the place where I was working, they had a dedicated internet connection. It was a 64 kilobits dedicated internet connection, and believe me or not, that company had to pay a couple of lakhs for that 64 kilobits internet connection. But the beauty of that connection was that it was always on, so I was able to access the internet anytime I would like. And at that time, this internet revolution was just starting, and we just started using chatting applications like Yahoo Messenger and stuff like that. And if I recall, we were still using Windows 98 at that time. At that time, Windows became pretty stable. Windows 95 was good, but Windows 98 was pretty stable, and we did not have to reboot the system in a day 3 or 4 times. So that was great. But after a year, I left that company because I thought that I could do this stuff on my own and make these websites and stuff for others and make a living regarding that. So I left the job. Now I'm going to just deviate a little bit from the hardware computing story and talk about the internet revolution that actually began to happen during that time. As I said, in 1999-98, internet just started getting on, and still not many people used to use it. Only nerds and people in the tech industry used to use it. But people started getting used to instant messengers like Yahoo Messenger, and some people even got used to email. And I think so the main driver for many people getting an internet connection was email. And now moving to about 2000 and 2001, what had happened is the MP3 revolution, I call. By 2000 and 2001, integrated sound cards were coming with the computer, so you did not need a dedicated sound card. And we had decent dial-up connections. So downloading songs from sites like Napster or P2P was easy. A 3 or 4 meg file you could download in about 15 minutes. People started downloading this MP3 files a lot. Again in 2000, iPod also was launched, but it was a niche device. I think so the iPod really started taking roots from 2004 onwards, because it was pretty expensive at that time. Again in 2001, search was in infancy, and we had the popular search engines at that time were Yahoo, Alta Vista, Excite. Google was there, but nobody knew about it, and Google was surprisingly not popular. And moving about a couple of years ahead, in around 2003, a lot of people started getting internet even for their home personal use. And a lot of people were using internet for communication via email, and even instant messengers were very popular. And I think so around 2002 or 2003, these instant messengers also started this voice chat capabilities, and it became a big hit. And again in 2003, I think so, Skype was also launched. Skype was a video service, but initially many people were using it just for chatting and again voice chat. Around 2003 or something, Google as a search engine really came up, and people started to relate search as Google, because the search results that you used to get with Google were far superior than the other search engines. And slowly the likes of Alta Vista, etc. began to fade. Windows XP was launched in 2001, but it became popular by 2003. And it was very stable compared to 95 or 98. Windows XP, you could just leave it running for a couple of days without even restarting or crashing the system. That was amazing for a Windows based system at that time. And many people for their internet browsing used to use Internet Explorer, and Internet Explorer was becoming the de facto standard. But in 2004, Firefox web browser was launched, and I think so that's an important thing, because Microsoft was not investing that much into Internet Explorer, and Firefox began to take traction. In 2005, we started to see a few web-based videos and using Real Media and WMV videos. And in India, I would say that our internet revolution started before this, because around 2005 only BSNL started this BSNL broadband using this ADSL connection. And this was the true broadband connection, because you could leave the connection on for 24 hours. Again in 2007 and 2008, I think so this the concept of videos started to take traction because of YouTube, and we started to see a lot of home based videos publishing on sites like YouTube, etc. Also tools like Skype, etc. got a boost because people started to use webcams to communicate with each other. So that was the internet revolution. Now let's get back to the hardware. At around 2000, Intel was dominating the market with their Pentium processors, and in 2000 they launched the first 1 gigahertz processor. I think so it was a P3, Pentium 3 they used to call it. And in 2001, Windows XP was launched. This was a big operating system in my opinion for consumers and as well as for Microsoft, because for consumers this was the first operating system that was based on the stable Windows NT kernel, and it was one of the most stable Windows versions yet. During this time I upgraded my computer to a P3 and it used to run Windows XP pretty well, but I'd still during this time RAM was pretty expensive, and we used to run these systems with just about 64 MB of RAM or something like that. Imagine running Windows XP on 64 MB. That's interesting. Now moving to 2003, something interesting started to happen. AMD, which was an underdog till now, launched the first 64-bit processor known as AMD Athlon, and this was a big hit. And I remember that I used to always build computers with Intel parts, and I upgraded my computer in about 2004, and I remember from 2004 to 2007 the several computers that I had made, and I used AMD in most of them, because at that time AMD was a much superior processor to compared to Intel processors. Also during this time, mobile phones started to evolve, because in early 2000 we generally had dumb phones. We actually in 2001 or something we started to get camera phones, but they were dumb, doing just basic tasks. But in about 2003 or something like that, we started to getting smartphones from Windows. They were known as Windows Mobile, and from Symbian. They used to use the stylus and used to have this touch screen that's a resistive type. And more than Windows, I think so, Symbian was pretty popular with Nokia, and Nokia was the top dog over here. Moving on to 2005, both Intel and AMD released their first dual-core processor. This was a big step, because till date we used to have a single core processor, and the race was towards getting the highest megahertz. But both Intel and AMD were having problems raising the clock speed. I think so they were touching barely around 3 gigahertz, and they were having problems. So the move to multi-core processors started with this in 2005. Also in gaming, Microsoft released the Xbox 360, and I purchased the same, and to be frank, the original version was really crappy and was riddled with a lot of problems. In 2006, both the Wii and the PS3 were launched, and the Wii became an instant hit because of that motion controller. Smartphones continued to evolve a lot. Symbian now had a lot of features. We also could get Wi-Fi on our phones, and we could get a decent enough browser from which you can browse the web. But again, they were clunky. In 2007, Microsoft released the Vista operating system, and it was not that great. Everybody knows what happened to Vista. But the biggest innovation, I think so, in 2007 was from Apple, and that was the iPhone. I still say that the modern Androids or the whatever touch phones that you see, if Apple wouldn't have released the iPhone, we would have been still using that stupid stylus and using old outdated smartphone OS like Symbian. I immediately got the iPhone, and after using it for just a day or two, I saw the future, and it came very clear to me that old technologies like Symbian and etc. are not going to compete with the new smartphone. And this was the first truly, I would say, a phone that is smartphone and was user friendly. In 2007, as Vista was launched, I built a new computer on the Intel quad core, that's Q6600 with 2 GB of RAM, and I loaded Vista with that. But after using it for about 2 years, I got frustrated with Vista, and finally in 2009, I moved to an iMac. That's a 20-inch iMac, and to be frank, it was a great experience because using this iMac was great. I did not have to tinker around a lot with the system, and it used to just work. In 2010, I got my first Android phone, and to be frank, I was happy because Android operating system allowed me to do whatever I liked without jailbreaking the phone. In 2009, I got access to SSD. I used the system using a SSD drive in 2009, but I couldn't afford it. But in 2010, I purchased a new laptop, that's the MacBook Air, and it was blazing fast. And the only reason it was blazing fast was due to the SSD, and I knew at that time SSDs are the future. Let us go back a couple of years ago. Again, one thing I'm missing is that in 2007 there was a revolution called by Asus started launching these tiny netbooks. They used to call it netbooks, and initially and they became a big hit. The initial version was a 7-inch version, and later on by about 2009, I think so, this is a 10-inch netbook. 10-inch netbooks became pretty popular. We also started to get variants of netbooks like this. This is basically a hybrid. It tries to be a netbook and also tries to be a tablet, but the form factor of this never worked and it failed. And I always thought the tablet computer like this was pretty interesting concept, but to be frank, working on a tablet computer like this was not a very pleasant experience. And in 2010, Apple launched the iPad. Initially, I was reluctant about the iPad because I also thought it as nothing but a larger screen iPod Touch. But after using it for just a couple of hours, I realized the fact that this is how tablet computing has to be. And I would again give credit to Apple for the future tablets that we are going to see, because all of them are based on the iPad. Moving to the future, I see that we'll still have innovation on the smartphone space, and we'll continue to see the tablet computing experience to evolve. Windows 8 is going to launch in 2012, and that is going to basically shake up a few things, hopefully in the tablet segment, and it's interesting to see that. So these are my views about the 2 decades of computing. I thank you for watching this video. You can also subscribe to my channel to be notified about my future videos. That's it for now. This was Ranjit for tech2buzz.com, and hopefully I'm going to see you in my next video.